Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am going to talk about the books that I read in December. I've already talked about some of them because some of them were for a project that I did last year, reading different genres and authors I've never read before, so I will link that video. But these are the other things that I haven't had a chance to talk about yet. So I'm going to start with three that I don't really know how to talk about, so I just wanted to bring them to your attention. The first being A Christmas Carol, because I don't think I need to do a review of this, right? Everyone is at least roughly familiar with this. I enjoyed it. I thought it was charming. It's my first Dickens. I don't think this is indicative of his work. This is quite short and I think probably a little bit more straightforward than some of his other stuff, I'm assuming. But yeah, it was really cute. I'll probably pick it up maybe in a few years again at Christmas time, although I think my favorite way to consume the story is still the Muppets version, but this was really cute. So the next book is another Christmas themed one. I didn't rate this on Goodreads because it's a collection of letters and I really don't know how to rate that at all. And also, these were never meant to be published, as I think most letters aren't, right? But it's letters from Father Christmas, and it's a collection of letters from Tolkien to his children. The letters span over 20 years. I thought it was really cute and sweet. These aren't your average letters from Santa that most of us would write. Santa often would paint paintings for the children and draw pictures about his escapades. There's a whole cast of characters. He's friends with the North Polar Bear, and goblins storm the North Pole and try to steal presents. There is a running story arc over the years where Father Christmas will say things oh, remember last year when those goblins came? Thankfully I haven't heard from them this year. There's a continuation there. Anyway, this was a labor of love, and something just really sweet he did for his kids. But I didn't rate it because how do you rate this? This was just something to put me in the Christmassy mood. But if you like stuff like that, then I would recommend it. It was really cute. The next thing that I really don't know how to talk about is I have a really hard time reviewing poetry collections. But I read Caroline Duffy's Standing Female Nude. This is her first collection of poetry. I think I talked about it a little bit in a Friday Reads maybe, but it was a mixed bag. A lot of the some of the poems were kind of eh. The ones that I didn't like, I found a little bit flexing, if that makes any sense. Overly pretentious isn't quite the right word, but obfuscated or not easy to grasp. And it felt like flexing, look what I can do, look how I can write a poem. But the ones that I thought were good, I thought were really good, outstanding good. But I mean, what do I know? She's a poet laureate and I'm not. So for the rest of the things I read, I think I'm going to go with what I liked least to what I liked the most. So we're going to start with this little graphic novel. This is middle grade graphic novel called Pashmina by Nidhi Chanani. So Pashmina follows this teenage girl who is American, but her mother moved there when she was a baby, or maybe when she was pregnant, something like that. So she's lived in America her whole life, and her mother's an immigrant, and she feels kind of disconnected from her Indian roots. And she is interested in learning more about India, but her mother doesn't want to take her there. Her mother says bad things about India and keeps telling her you don't know what it's really like there, and stuff like that. So she feels really disconnected. And one thing I did like about the story is the mother-daughter relationship, and I felt it was pretty nuanced because they love each other, but they'd grate on each other's nerves, and I just thought that was pretty realistic, and it also kind of develops throughout the story, so I thought that was good. And what happens is she found I forget the character's name, but she finds this Pashmina, and it magically transport her to this India, but it's not the real India. It's this her imagined best version of India. When she's in her real world, things look like this, and then she puts on the Pashmina, and everything turns to color, and she's transported to India, and she has these little animal friends who are teaching her things about India, but it's a very idealized India. So I thought the art style was really cute. I thought the message was really good. There's a lot in here kind of about like women's stories, and I thought that was really good. But I thought it was a little bit disjointed, and the author was trying to put too much in here and needed to like focus the story more. So it just kind of turned out to be like just okay. The next is another graphic novel called This Place 150 Years Retold. And it's by many different contributors and different illustrators. So I will link it so you can see all their names. This is an anthology. And as the title suggests, this is Canadian Indigenous history retold through the Indigenous lens rather than through the white lens. So this was another 3-star read for me. I think that I really appreciated the information in here because this isn't like mythology or like that kind of thing. It is like actual history. There might be some there's some spirituality or magical realism in some of the stories, but not all. I think most of them are straight histories. And I really appreciated all of that information. The artwork in almost all of these I thought was just absolutely fantastic. So this goes chronologically, and in front of every story, there's a little bit of kind of like a contextual little piece here by the author, kind of like giving you a setup or explaining maybe something about the culture, like some piece of information you might need to know to understand or appreciate the story more. And it also includes a timeline to give you some more context for the story. And I really liked all the timelines. I learned a ton of crap from them that I didn't know. And I like to think I'm fairly knowledgeable, like obviously not to the extent of an Indigenous person, clearly, but like for a white person in Canada, I know like a decent amount of history, but not nearly enough. And clearly this has shown me where my gaps lie and where I need to learn more. So I really love the timelines. I learned a ton of stuff through that is shocking, frankly. But my quibbles are, first of all, not for every story, but for quite a few, a lot of the information given in these timelines doesn't actually relate to the story, or doesn't really give you context. Like I feel like the timeline given and the story told don't really match up. So that was confusing in parts, but like I said, I still enjoyed all of the information from the timeline. So that's very minor. My biggest issue with it was how some of the stories were told. They were told in a very distant way, rather than have like a first person story or being in the story. Not all, but a lot of these stories are someone telling someone else the story. There's a story in here that I think would have been better if it was just the story of this girl who is taken from her mother and placed in a foster system, and like her foster brother that she develops a bond with, and like what they go through together. I think the story would have been more impactful or more resonant if we were just following her story, but instead it's told as the mother relaying the story to her child. So that kind of setup happens with quite a few stories in here, where it's a person telling someone else what's happened like in the past, and we cut from the action, the stuff happening in the past, and then cut back to like present day, the person telling, and then cut back and forth. I thought it made the story more confusing and more disjointed. I do realize that this may have been done intentionally, since storytelling and sharing our own personal histories is very important in Indigenous communities. So I realize there's probably a good reason to do that. I just personally felt that it didn't lend well to telling a story in like a graphic novel format. And the stories that are staying with me are the ones that didn't use that kind of separation through this narrator. The ones that really stuck with me are the ones that were kind of like set during that time, if that makes sense. So informative, important information. I learned a ton, but how the stories were set up, I found didn't really work for some of them. I am, however, going to link an Own Voices review of this anthology. So next on my list is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. This was a weird old science fiction from the 1960s. Fans of Dune, I think, will really like this. Like Dune, it is set on a planet with a harsh environment, and there's a lot of political intrigue, and I found like the writing style's kind of similar. So this is set on a cold climate planet, and the inhabitants of this planet are genderless. So they are both sexes kind of at the same time. So they don't have gender and they don't have separate sexes, and they have a mating cycle where one will become more female or more male, depending on the pairing. And so it kind of has this interesting setup. And one of the things I loved about this book is how the author kind of plays around with like gender stereotypes and stuff, and how like those don't exist on this planet. But the one of the characters we follow is kind of like an outsider. He's an envoy sent to this planet because he's trying to convince the governments of this planet to join this like collective called the Ecumen. It's like a trade collective, and they like share information and inventions and like ideas and things, and like material goods. So he's trying to convince them to join this. So he's the outsider, and like he's the only one that has kind of like this gendered BS. Like he thinks a lot of things that are kind of like misogynistic, like when some of the local inhabitants act in ways that are like more female, where he sees them as male because they don't really look female, that kind of stuff. So I like how she played around with that, and I think it set up like a really interesting society where everyone truly is equal in terms of gender, because gender doesn't exist on this planet. Anyway, that part was fascinating. The political intrigue was really interesting as well, although it was confusing. So I gave this 3 stars. I really enjoyed the world building. I liked all the intrigue. I really wanted to know what was going to happen. But the reason it didn't get higher was because it was just a little too confusing. Not that I wanted the author to like spoon feed me the information, but there was so much going on, and like so many characters and names, and that I was getting so confused that like at the end, I buddy read this with Keely. I will link her channel, and like we had to talk about a lot of stuff because we weren't quite getting things, and at the end, when the plot kind of like resolves itself, there was a choice made by a character where we didn't quite understand like why that choice was made, and we kind of, I think, worked it out between the two of us, but we needed just, or at least I needed, just a smidge more of explanation, or like a character reflecting post this decision to like help us understand it. Just like a sentence or two would have sufficed. Anyhow, so yeah, we really needed a glossary, which we didn't get. And we really needed a map, which would, like, there were so many place names I didn't really understand where characters were a lot of the time. So that gave me Doom vibes as well, actually. Like Doom was also confusing. So that's why I say if you like Doom, you will like this. Very typical, I think, well done 1960s science fiction, but really confusing, and something that you would need to like take your time reading. So next on my list, I had to return to the library, so I'll insert a picture, and that's It's Not About the Burqa, edited by Mariam Khan. So this is a collection of essays by Muslim women about Muslim women, and the impetus for it was a comment that a UK politician, I forget who it was now, back in like 2016, I think it was, made like a comment about Muslim women that was like very, very like trenched in like awful stereotypes and stuff. Basically, this is a collection of essays from women who are sick of Muslim women who are sick of always being the topic of conversation, but not being the ones speaking. So people love to talk about Muslim women and how they're oppressed and how this and that. But the only people that seem to be talking about that are either Muslim men or like non-Muslim people, white people. So this was Muslim women in their own words talking about different issues. So it covers a lot of things. It covers like queerness in Islam, and it covers like misogyny, and it covers like wearing hijab and like the decision of like whether or not to wear hijab. There's like an essay in here about like divorce by a woman who is on like husband number 3, so she's been married like 3 times. I think I gave this collection 4 stars. I really liked all the different viewpoints. Not all of the women who wrote essays think the same things. We think of like groups of people as being a monolith, and that's just like not the case. So it was really great to hear from like different women. Yeah, I thought it was a super solid collection of essays. What really stuck with me, and I think kind of like one of the overall themes too, was that they are kind of stuck between a rock and the hard place when they want their voices heard, because there is this stereotype of Islam being very sexist, and all Muslim women are like controlled by their husbands and like that kind of narrative. But it's hard. What I gathered from the essays is that as a Muslim woman, it can be hard to speak out on that because, yes, there is sexism in Muslim culture, but there's sexism in every culture. This isn't strictly a Muslim issue. Maybe the sexism looks different in different cultures, but like there's sexism in literally every country and in every like religion and etc., etc. So it's really hard for Muslim women sometimes to speak out on that because, like, yes, they want to bring attention to like sexism and ways that they are being oppressed, like within their community, but when they do that, they worry about feeding into stereotypes, and like they also love their community, and this isn't something that's, again, like isolated within the Muslim community. Sexism exists everywhere. So that I just thought was like a really interesting kind of like running theme. I thought it was like a really great collection, and I would highly recommend it. And then last but certainly not least is my favorite read out of this list, and that's They Called Us Enemy by George Takei. And this was co-written by Justin Eisinger and Stephen Scott, and illustrated by Harmony Becker. So I gave this a 4 stars on Goodreads. Really, I think this is a 4.5. It is George Takei's story of when, as a small child, his family were uprooted from their lives and sent to Japanese concentration camps in the United States post the attack on Pearl Harbor. I thought I knew a fair bit about the Japanese internment camps, but boy, oh boy, was there a lot I did not know. So just to like educate yourself, this is a great book. This was just really well put together, hard hitting where it needed to be, hopeful where it needed to be, part history, but also part critique of like our political systems, part love letter to his parents and how they created this life for their kids amid this like horrible time they were going through. It really tugged at my heart. I might have shed more than a tear, but I am so glad I read it. And like I said, there were some heartwarming moments in there too. The way he talks about his parents is just lovely. So those are the books that I read in December. If you've read any of these, please let me know what you thought of them in the comments below. I'd love to have a chat. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope everyone's doing really, really well, and we'll chat soon. Take care.